Dobrý den, děkuji za pozvání.
Good afternoon. I want to thank everyone who contributed to this event taking place, to the organizers. I'm very happy to be here today after a while, after some years with Jürgen Kaiser, with whom we launched Merciful Summer, a campaign of Jubilee. We also staged this IMF World Bank Summit parallel program, or events that were inspired by it. So we decided to, and we pulled it off, to meet with the leading figures of the other side. We managed to present the petition, and I dare say they were surprised by what we told them. So it was all good, and it's very good to be here again, as something really needs to be done with the situation that Ivona outlined. So I'm going to speak about international development cooperation and financial obligations of the Czech Republic vis-a-vis the developing countries, together with my research partners, and using the statistics from Eurodat. We've tried to capture the Czech Republic's solution, or rather or the lack of solution of its obligations to these countries. So the Czech Development Cooperation, the history of it. We used to call it assistance or aid to less developed countries in the past, and a factor in that was the export of a revolution. We supported opposition groups and movements with ideology as well as weapons and other material resources. So it was basically the underlying objective to recruit as many members for the East Bloc, but this came to end in 1969. We were punished for deviating from the real socialism model. And I don't want to sound deterministic, but we started to orient ourselves more on business-led model of development cooperation. So we were much more selfish. We were basically advocating and asserting our own interests, our own national interests, so that we can win contracts to build power stations, etc. We were also manufacturing weapons, aircraft under license from the Soviet Union, etc. So we needed the export markets, and humanitarian assistance came part and parcel with that. Then on the international level, the modern type of development cooperation became or emerged, and the Czechoslovakia at the time refused to commit to 0.7% GDP, as did several other socialist countries. So after we transitioned from a centrally planned to completely unplanned economy, we became a recipient of development aid. Prior to that, we were donor. Now we were recipients. But this was last time we were in that position was in the time of the Marshall Plan. And it was not until the end of the last century and millennium and the start of the new ones that we became donor again. So among some non-profits, or some non-profits were already pushing the country in the direction of modern development cooperation, following the then recently adopted Millennium Development Goals, which was a huge development program ratified by all countries of the world at the UN Millennium Summit, including the Vatican and countries like that. So this happened. Whether it's successful or not, well, it depends on your viewpoint. But with the arrival of the new development program that followed the MDGs, that was the new program adopted in 2015 at the General Assembly, was the Sustainable Development Goals, and this was coincidentally also the time when the Social Democratic government or ministry came to power and basically undid what we had been building to date. There had been a lot of emphasis on private participation, so various PPP projects, etc. There was Deputy Minister Chotlapa from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and he is currently in control of what remains of development cooperation. And on these remains, on these ruins, he's trying to build something that would advance Czech economic interests abroad. So we are basically, in a roundabout way, we have returned to a certain economic survivalist style of development cooperation. Contributing to that is also the chaos in the non-profit sector. I'm stressing the non-profit sector, but I'm not calling it the civil society, because it's a non-profit sector, basically just groupings of people from ruling their different fiefdoms and feudal estates, and within their own private empires, they're trying to do something that they like to see as the right form of development cooperation. For instance, the attitude to NEX, looking for new ways of merging various humanitarian activities and bundling it with the solution to climatic change, etc. So there have been efforts to bundle development cooperation with various much more complex and abstract issues that has not been to the best interest of development cooperation. So the NGO sector is not the vehicle of civil mobilization, for instance, when it comes to migration. So what Ivona said or Jürgen said, this is not happening here. And we are talking about Prague, but this can be said about other large cities. But the large development aid organizations or churches have not played their mobilization role, which had been their traditional role in the past. So currently, the cooperation is directed at primarily at various private sector collaboration projects, and everything else is just breadcrumbs. Jürgen mentioned that maybe there is hope that the Czech Republic could start deleveraging, or could poorer countries, and despite the successes of our campaigns, this does not look likely. The situation, despite the campaigns having been successful, the situation has progressed rather to the worse. There have been ideas to do food aid on credit, or healthcare on credit, or it's people thought that this could ultimately become sometime profitable. There have been ideas to build various manufacturing or industrial capacities, breweries, etc. But many of these commitments were for arms trade, for the contracts to export and import arms and various other related technology, not necessarily lethal weaponry, but army vehicles, trucks. This has been traditionally our domain, manufacturing heavy-duty trucks that can get through various difficult terrains. So this is what the army says. Well, we export trucks, so we can't say that we are supporting war, but that's obviously not the right way to go about it. The end of the Cold War has changed a lot of things. The hazy real socialism has been replaced by some form of freedom-faced capitalism. So we terminated cooperation with many countries with whom we had very lively commercial and trade links. And we resigned on the opportunity to influence the course of events there. So we abandoned our very good cooperation with South America, Central Africa, and some Asian countries. So even the pro-business model has not taken root. Our new strategy is, or the new strategy was, which came in the 1990s, that we would stop giving loans, because we were ourselves recipient. We were receiving money through the pre-accession and accession facilities of the EU. So there was generally the tendency not to cancel debt or waive debt, because when the IMF World Bank Summit was here, just to appease OECD, a few million of debts of the debt of the poorest countries were written off, but that was it. That was just small change. As concerns debt recovery and debt collection, my colleague Stoyanov calls it the alternative workout methods. So those included selling a receivable, selling debt on the secondary market, which means you find an entity, a company that would help us collect on this debt, because companies are expected to be more effective in this way, or more experienced. And for that privilege, we would pay them, or we would let them keep half, or sometimes even more, of the nominal value of the debt. There have been some rather bizarre ideas, like collect or then not to collect our debt from Peru. Peru owed us, I don't know, 44, 46 million, and suddenly Peru decided to pay it off. So they sent it to a Czech bank, Obchodní banka. It was a commercial bank in the socialist regime. It was not a bank for this particular purpose. So nobody noticed that Peru had paid off its debt. Deputy Minister Zelenka decided to collect on the Peru debt. Peru was very surprised because they thought they had paid it, or they did actually pay it. But Deputy Minister Zelenka decided to collect on this debt and selected a debt collection partner and promised that 95% of what is collected from Peru. So the debt collector found that the debt has been paid, identified the bank. The money was transferred from that bank to another bank, and the debt collector took 95% of the amount. Some anonymous employee of the ministry had later drawn attention to this. The ministry tried to sweep it under the table, and eventually two employees of Obchodní banka, the first bank where the money from Peru had arrived, were tried in court and sentenced, but the debt collector company and Deputy Minister Zelenka escaped scot-free. So I think he deserves to be shown here with his name and face, because his debt collection efforts were hugely ineffective. For instance, the Russian Federation owed us 100 billion, released 53 billion, and the Czech state, out of the 53 that the Russian Federation paid, we as a country got only 18 billion. The Prime Minister lauded Zelenka's efforts as exemplary, and the corruption investigation police did not want to start investigation. So the Czech Republic is amongst the post-communist countries. Is one of the countries that waived the least debt. We are taking data from the World Bank. Bulgaria waived 126 million, Slovakia $43 million, all in US dollars. Poland 22 million, Hungary 20 million, and the Czech Republic waived $15 million. So when we were splitting with Slovakia, maybe it was somehow arranged during the negotiation that Slovakia was stuck with more bad debt than the Czech part. So we just did we just waived some of the debt of Zambia in very small fraction, etc. A few other countries, but currently this whole agenda falls to the Ministry of Finance, which is supposed to collect on those debts. Most of the old debts from the socialist era are still valid. When you take sovereign debt, I guess the sovereign debt or the debt from this that comes from our government loans to other countries, that's probably getting smaller, but the private debt, what we lend to private entities, is not getting smaller. For instance, we are demanding from Iraq that they pay the debt that Saddam Hussein ran up, and he borrowed to buy weapons to suppress and persecute the very same people who we are asking now to pay the debt. So this is the trend in various receivables. Now let's take a closer look at some of the developed and less developed countries. There are some countries which would be prime candidates for debt relief. One of the positive examples I can quote is the waiving of debt of Cambodia. During the merciful summer, we tried to use the Swiss model that involves a part debt waiver and a part of the debt being transformed into some programs that both sides agreed on. So for every dollar they invest, the debtor invests in their own healthcare, we would waive $1 or $2 of their debt to us. The Ministry of Finance, I'm not sure whether it had been spurred by us. This has been done with Cambodia. The Ministry of Finance had allowed Cambodia to apply the Swiss model, so part of the model has been, or part of the debt has been waived under this model, and the rest of the debt is being used in development programs involving Czech NGOs. So obviously I could talk on and on. I want to bring to your attention this book, which you can have for free. It contains a lot of those things mentioned by Jürgen. But there are other texts, since LRCR is one of the leaders in our field, and Jürgen has worked as a UN expert on these matters as well. So you can also follow up with some of the more of these ideas that you've heard here in the book itself.